Hello, everyone. Broadcasting live, November 6th, 2015. Sorry for the view again. A little bit messy. We're still trying to get this. I think I figured out a little bit about how to make it. I don't know. Whatever. So today we're going to do another Dhammapada. We're ready. Test. Yes. Hello and welcome back to our study of the Dhammapada. Today we continue on with verse number 106, which reads as follows. Not like that. And we'll start that again. Okay. Come on, body, behave. Hello and welcome back to our study of the Dhammapada. Today we continue on with verse 106, which reads as follows. Mase sahasena yo yajeta satang samang ekancha bhavitattanang muhuttampi pujaye sayeva pujana seyo yanche vasasatang hutang. Which means one can give a thousand month after month. Means 1,000 here is just slang for 1,000 pieces of money, right? We would think $1,000, 1,000 pieces of money, 1,000 gold coins. Yajeta satang samang. Can, for 100 years, one can sacrifice every month after month, 1,000 every month for 100 years. Ekancha, one time. Ekancha muhutampi, not one time, one moment. Pujaye, if one should pay homage for one moment. Bhavitattanang, to one who is self-controlled, or no, not controlled, who is of developed self, who is self-developed or cultivated. Sayeva pujana seyo, this puja is greater. Yanche wasasatang hutang, greater than the thousands, greater than the 100 years, the 100-year sacrifice, the 100 years of sacrifice. So this verse was spoken in regards to Sariputta's uncle. We're told that Sariputta had an uncle who was a Brahmin. Sariputta's whole family were Brahmins. And before the Sariputta passed away, he actually went back to teach his mother, who was still of wrong view, who still had the idea that what the Buddha taught was wrong, and Sariputta had lost his way by becoming a Buddhist monk. And so we have that story elsewhere. But here we have a story of an uncle of his who was a Brahmin, who also had wrong views. And so it's kind of a funny, it's a very short story, but it's kind of a funny little story. So Sariputta went to see his uncle and asked him straight up, do you ever do any good deeds? And his uncle right away said, oh yes, actually. Every month I give, or per month, I give what amounts to 1,000 gold coins worth of offerings. I give offerings amounting to 1,000 gold coins a month. And he says, okay, who do you give them? Who do you give this to? And I give it to the naked ascetics. These guys who as their religious practice, take to not wearing clothes because somehow that's meaningful. It's considered to be more hardcore. It is pretty hardcore. If you want to go extreme, not wearing clothes is the way to go, because it means in the sun you're at the mercy of the sun and your mercy of the cold. You're at the mercy of the flies and the insects. Couldn't imagine doing that in a place where there were mosquitoes. And certainly makes you stand out, makes it difficult for you to fit in society. But these were the people that he was paying respect to. And so Sariputta says, well, what do you hope to get from that? Okay, so you give money to these naked ascetics. What do you hope to get from that? He said, oh, well, because of this, my aspiration is to go to the Brahma realms. And Sariputta asks, well, is that the way to go to the Brahma realms? And he says, oh, yeah, oh yes, absolutely. And he said, okay, where did you hear this? He says, oh, well, my teachers, the naked ascetics, told me. Which is it's kind of how you get what you get in all religions. The teachers will tell you, if you give to us, it is of greatest benefit. It's actually an interesting story, and in some ways it's a bit, well, it's not one of my favorite stories. But I think we have to talk about this and sort of come to an understanding of what's meant here. And I think one way you can look at this, and of course, this is me finessing it, but okay, so the story goes, Sariputta shakes his head and says, Brahmin, that's not the way. Well, we all know that's not the way to the Brahma realms. And he says, you're not on the path to the Brahma realms, and your teachers don't know the way to the Brahma realms. You don't know, and neither your teachers know the way to the world of God, basically. And he says, the Buddha is the only one who knows. So come and see the Buddha. Come with me and I will ask him to tell you the way to Brahma. So the idea here is that, it's the problem here is that it's still just an appeal to authority. Who says the Buddha is going to know better than these guys? If they say X and the Buddha says Y, how do you tell which one is right and which one is wrong? So he goes to the Buddha, and I think you have to take it. We have to see exactly what's being said here, and of course the story, the actual words of the story, may just be an abbreviation. But basically, the Buddha says to him, uh, giving to those guys is worthless. Giving to monks in my religion, that's what will lead you to, or that's worth 1,000 times, or it's not worth the 1,000th part of simply looking at one of my disciples. And then he teaches this verse. And so you kind of get the sense, well, it's just the Buddha saying the same thing as everyone else. If you give to my disciples. But first of all, you would have to agree, if you follow the Buddha's teaching, if you have some understanding of the idea of karma, then you'd have to agree. Well, you'd look at how the Buddhist monks practice, and you'd say, or not just the Buddhist monks, but people who follow the Buddhist teaching. You look at how they practice, and you say, wow, yes, giving to them is of great fruit. But of course, we believe that as Buddhists. The question is, how do we explain it beyond just making it sound like we're promoting ourselves? Because it really does just sound like self-promotion. And as I've said before, some of these verses, and not the verses, but mostly more the stories, tend to be self-aggrandizing or self-promoting. So in a sense, you kind of have to, well, maybe not necessarily be skeptical yourself, but you have to accept that people are going to look at these and say, this is just like religion always is. It's all about gimme, gimme, gimme. Because some of the verses are about giving and tend to be, or the stories tend to be instructive in regards to giving to the monks, giving to, yeah, to the Buddhist religion being the best way. But the saving grace, if it needs one, comes from the verse itself, because the verse doesn't actually say that, right? The verse makes the important distinction that we would all make as Buddhists, that it doesn't actually matter what religion a person is in, or even what teachings they follow necessarily. It's that they are bhavitatta, which means they are self-cultivated. I mean, that of course has to be qualified as well. What kind of cultivation do you mean? But it means enlightened. If a person has truly done something to deserve a gift, then it's of greater fruit. In Buddhism, we recognize four kinds of four aspects. There is the there is three aspects: the purity of the giver, the purity of the recipient, and the purity of the gift. So, if the gift is pure, then it's considered to be of greater benefit, of greater fruit, than if the gift is impure. So, for example, if it's giving alcohol, or if it's a gift of poison, then that would be a less beneficial gift. But if it's a gift of food, or a gift of shelter, or a gift of medicine, or a gift of something like clothing, then that would be of greater benefit, then that would be of the greatest benefit. Or if it's a gift of Dhamma, a gift of truth, then that would be of most benefit. And if the giver is pure, so if the person giving is a moral person, is an ethical person, is a developed person, then of course their intentions are going to be pure. And so the gift is purified in that way. If the recipient is pure, then it's better than if the recipient is a immoral, unwholesome, uncultivated individual. So that's the sort of the detailed teaching here. Basically, it's a teaching about where we should pay homage and respect, who we should respect. And so it's not a deep teaching. It's not the kind of teaching that you would say, well, if I follow this, I'm going to become enlightened. How does it relate to our meditation practice? Well, there is a sense that our practice of charity is supportive of our meditation practice, even as Buddhist monks. So giving the Dhamma, teaching the Dhamma is a kind of a gift, and it's a support of the practice of the person teaching. And for those people who have monetary resources, giving in this way is a means of support. And it is a question that comes up: what do I do with my money? I have this money, and part of it I want to give to charity. In order to support my own spiritual development, I want to be kind and generous and supportive of good things. So what are the good things I should support? Should I support these guys who are going naked, or should I support these guys who are cultivating insight meditation? And as Buddhists, we would tend to agree that going naked isn't really all that a great benefit. And in fact, I think we're going to get fairly soon talking about people going naked and so on. Or I think actually we've had the verse, right? We've had the verse about the man who pretended to be an ascetic, and it's something about month after month. But it is important that our livelihood and the rest of our life, our activity in the worldly sphere does conduce to meditation practice and development. And so this is a question that comes up: how do we interact with spiritual people? What do we do with our resources? Where are our resources best spent? And it's not just monetary resources; it's our energy, our intellect, our study. You know, where are we best to engage ourselves? Not just in meditation, but in the rest of our life, because this verse doesn't actually deal with meditation, except insofar as it talks about the recipient as being um, really only a factor uh, in regards to that person's spiritual development. It's not just because they are a placeholder, like someone who becomes a priest and you give them because they are in a place, or a person who becomes a monk and you give to them because they are a monk. Okay, this person is a monk and you give to them. It's not actually considered to be very great fruit just because the person is a Buddhist monk. There is something there. You think this is a representative of the Sangha, I'm giving it to the Buddhist religion, but there's none of the sense, unless they are a developed person, someone who has cultivated meditation, someone who has done something worthy, and therefore is a person whose actions and whose um, support the energy and the power, the strength that comes from supporting such a person will go to good things for themselves and for others, will not go to hurt others or hurt themselves, will not be wasted. So as meditators, as Buddhists, this is the sort of thing we have to think about. And it's very clear and simple. Of course, maybe it's a little too abbreviated, because actually there's more to it than that. You can't just give to an enlightened being and hope that it's going to bring good benefit. You yourself have to be mindful. You yourself have to be conscious of why you're giving, and giving for the right reasons. You can't be giving to brag to others and so on. I mean, you can, but it's of less fruit, and you can't just give them anything. Giving them, people often like to give money, which is what was talked about in this verse. Money is actually, when I was in Thailand, um, there's a big thing because most monks use money, and so it was a sense that, well, people want to give you, why aren't you accepting money? They want to give, and you're preventing them from doing this good deed. And I said, well, giving money is actually a fairly poor gift to give, because then you're saying to the other person, go and do it yourself, go and get it yourself, as opposed to bringing the person something beneficial, something that they can actually use. You can't eat food. It's very difficult to wear food. You can't use it as medicine. It's actually quite useless. It's just paper. And moreover, it's a dangerous thing, because you give money and you force the person to think about, even if their mind is pure, you force them to think about doing this, doing that. Where am I going to go? What am I going to get? As opposed to bringing them food, thinking it out for them. It's a very much more powerful gift to give something that they will actually use. So some people have gone to the convenience of at holidays just giving money, right, or gift certificates or something. But it's not the same as actually putting some thought into it and saying, well, this person could use that, or even better, asking them what they need. Is there anything, and so on. But Thai people have the sense that you can't ask a monk what they need and so on. Anyway, but it's not just about giving to monks. I mean, if you give to a person on the side of the road who's hungry, that's a great thing. You give them a meal to eat, or ask them if there's anything they need, or you help them go to the doctors or so on, or you help them find a job. All great things and very powerful things that you can do. And if they come from your own heart, then you actually purify them. You actually purify the deed. So it's not necessary to just give to people who are cultivated. If you give and you yourself are cultivated, then there's the benefit of you helping the world, right? That's considered to be a pure deed as well. And on the other hand, if you give the Dhamma, then the Dhamma purifies it. Or if you give something very powerful and the gift is very powerful, then the gift itself makes it a pure deed and makes it a powerful gift. So anyway, not a lot to say, except another thing that we might say about this is it points to the error of magnitude that people sometimes fall into. They think of it in terms of thousands, right? And that's part of what the Buddha is saying here. He's saying, really, if just for a moment you think a good thought towards someone who really deserves it, you say, I pay respect to the Buddha, or I pay respect to an enlightened being, then that one moment is actually more powerful than 100 years of giving 1,000 gold pieces a month, which is a huge sum of money. Because people think that it's how much you give, and it's actually certainly not. I mean, rich people often brag about how much charity they give, how much money they give, but it's meaningless because it has nothing to do with your state of mind. It says nothing about what your state of mind is like and whether the gift is rightly given. So if you give millions of dollars to fund war, or if you give millions of dollars to fund wrong view, for example, people who put all this money into maybe certain religious teachings or religious traditions that are hateful or spiteful or misguided. It's actually like throwing away money, or maybe even worse than throwing it away. If you support a cause that is harmful to people, for example, because it's all about the mind. One moment of actually just practicing meditation yourself is a much, much greater thing to do. But if you're going to give, and giving is good, then you should give with a pure mind yourself. You should give what is pure, and you should give to those people who are engaged in pure things. So, another verse about giving. That's the Dhammapada for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in, and keep practicing. So, right. How does that look? Is the camera okay? Yeah.
Very bright, Bante. Actually, it's a little hard to see you. It's that bright.
Hard to see me because it's too bright, huh?
Yeah, you're like...
It's funny. It's because I turned off the other one. How's
That's
that?
better. That's much more
Right,
natural.
I
Yeah.
don't need that.
There you go.
Okay. So today I went and tried to get some posters put up. Boy, was that an ordeal. Full color printouts. I wonder if I have them. I showed them already, right? I've got the printouts now. And of course, I printed one out, and then there's actually they have to put a sticker on it, and then you have to color photocopy, which actually ruins the colors. So they ended up turning out not so good. But we put up posters, or we're having posters put up for a campfire and for our weekly meditation group, asking people, what are you waiting for? Don't let the moment pass you by. So I'm going to echo if I'm doing that right. I have to.
I don't know. Is there an echo?
There's probably not much because now the speakers are much further away.
Yeah, I don't hear anything.
Okay, well, maybe we can do without it. Oh, except it's should be fine though, because you're now probably routed through monitor of null output. Ooh. I bet the audio stream hasn't heard me at all. That's no good. Why does it do that? test. Yeah. Okay. There's probably 20 minutes of silence on the audio stream. Anyway. Yeah, that's right. I have to go in and change it every time. What's my mic? What mic am I using? It's recording. Yeah, from the right place. Okay. Technology. You wouldn't believe how many little things come together to make this happen. It's more than I care to think about.
If you want to make a little pre-flight checklist, I can check with you before you start the Dhammapada and make sure
Right.
everything's all set.
Hey, that's a good idea. Way to think. No, there's too much. It's all convoluted and mixed up. But okay, for pre-flight, what we have to check is I have to check whether I've set up pulse audio. And whether the loopback devices are set up correctly. Whether I've turned on dark ice. I think those three things will do it.
Okay.
And there's much more that could go wrong, but
Now, is that only for when you're doing Dhammapada videos within the Hangout, or is that for all Hangouts?
that should be for all Hangouts.
Okay.
For the Dhammapada, I mean, I also have to check, but most of the other stuff is working. Most of the other stuff is working. So, questions?
Yes. Does anybody know if it matters what language I meditate in? If the ing suffix is the ing suffix important? For example, seeing versus I see?
No, no, not important. In fact, the Buddha said I see, but because in Pali it's one word.
And the question was about noting specifically, so it doesn't matter which language a person notes in.
No, certainly doesn't. Hopefully it's a language you understand, you know and understand. The idea is it's a tool that, because we use language to represent things, so it's a way for the human mind to represent an idea and to therefore be directed towards it. Like if I shout fire, everyone's immediately thinking of fire and how to, like if there's a fire and someone yells fire, why do they do that? They shout fire so people will know that there's a fire and will direct their attention accordingly. It's to alert our minds to the reality, to bring our minds, to create alertness.
Where in Toronto are you giving a talk? This was actually from last night.
I'm not. I'm going to Toronto next Saturday for lunch. I've been invited for lunch. Pretty sure I'm not giving a talk, but you never know. I do doubt it.
Bhante, I've noticed that you have an exceptional memory. Mine is really terrible. Could you give some tips on improving my memory?
I mean, I haven't done much to improve it. I think I was born with a pretty good memory. I remember when I was in high school, they were showing reruns of Monty Python's Flying Circus. And there was this one show where they all, this is really not Buddhism, is it? Anyway, about memory. It does say something. Each one, by the end of the show, each one of them, so it starts off with this sketch where they have this name that's just obscenely long. And by the end of the show, each of the guys had said the name, and it just, wow, it made me think, wow, these guys have such good memory. And so I went and I think this was back when the internet was really, really new, but somehow I found a website that was dedicated to Monty Python and managed to get a transcription of it. And so I spent about a week with it on a piece of paper, memorizing it. And the interesting thing was that after that week, I couldn't get it out of my head. This is how habits are formed. It's not, and this shows non-self really. I would be sitting there and wow, it starts to play itself back in my head because I had become obsessive about it. The name was Johann Gamblepati Divan Oshfern Splendid Splatter Krashkren Bonfry Digger Dingle Dangle Dongle Digger Dingle Dangle Bernstein von Nackatrasher Upperwing Horowitz Ticklenser Grandenotti Grandenotti, yeah, I can't remember. Speltinkle Grandlich Cromer Spelterwasser Kurslich Himbelensik Grandenotti Kurslich, I can't remember. Something of Ohm. But I mean, there is a point there that's actually quite interesting for us, and that's the fact that it's just an organic thing. I mean, memory isn't something to be proud of or be happy about, even necessarily. Because you know what? There was a phone call, and I just unplugged the phone to fix it. I better plug the phone back in. Let's see who called. They're not going to be all that happy, I suppose. Richard Evans. I wonder who Richard... Does anyone know a Richard Evans? You're on the air. I'll let it ring once, and then if they want to call back, they can call back. That's how you do it, right? In Thai, they call it miscall, but it becomes a verb. Miscall me, they say.
So what?
Missed call me.
Let it ring once, and then they'll call you back.
Yeah, because in Asia, you only pay if you're calling. You don't lose minutes if you're being called. So it's a big thing to call someone and just let it ring once, so that you don't have to pay, and they pay. Or I mean, it's just a way. Actually, it's more used as a way to give someone your number. What's your number? Oh, just missed call me. More questions?
Not sure. I don't see any.
Right,
Oh.
we're talking about memory anyway. There are ways. I mean, the point is, it's not really a Buddhist thing. You know, memory is something you can build, is something you can work at. To some extent, I suppose you could argue, on the other hand, that to some extent it's organic. But nonetheless, it's not something that I would teach. It's not something that I would encourage you to focus your efforts on. If you don't have a good memory, don't work in a job that requires you to have a good memory, that's all. Find a job that allows you to build habits and work based on your skills. You know, there was this monk who couldn't remember a single stanza, and he still became an arahant.
Was that the monk that was given a cloth?
Mm-hmm. That was him.
Bante, what is the next step after the basic meditation you teach? Is something added to walking and sitting meditation?
Yeah, that's why we've started doing these courses. There's a lot that's added to both walking and sitting. And so I've started doing that with people, but it's based on our weekly meetings. Every week I'll meet with people and give them extra meditation exercises.
Bhante, you made a mention of habit being associated with non-self. Could you please elaborate?
It's a funny question. I mean, it's like it points to a thirst to understand non-self, which is common. People, whenever they hear the word non-self, they want to know, what does that mean? How can that help me understand non-self? You can't really understand non-self unless you practice, and you shouldn't. It's not something that we over-intellectualize and therefore get all confused about. I mean, it's quite simple. Habits are constructs. When they're built, you can't just turn them off, and therefore they're non-self. It's not a hard concept, really. But deeper, I think you have to sort of let go of, potentially, I don't know who this is or what they're coming from, but this kind of question, it points to something, the idea of our confusion about non-self. Because because we have this strong idea of self, and so we think in terms of that. We think in terms of our view of self, but it's not like that. It's just plain and simple facts and realities. Habits form, and you can't just turn them on and suddenly have the habit. But through the repeated behavior, the habit forms, and it's only a repeated change in behavior that will change the habit. So they're not self in the sense that they can be turned on and off. There's no control over them.
I think we're all caught up on questions.
Okay. Well, then, good night. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Robin, for your help.
Thank you, Bhante.
Good night.
Good night.